The final song, When Death Met Simon Cowell's Compassion. The coughing started before David Thompson even reached the microphone. 82 years old, his once tall frame now bent and fragile from months of chemotherapy, he shuffled across the America's Got Talent stage with the determination of a man who knew this would be his last performance on Earth. Simon Cowell watched from the judges' table, initially concerned about the elderly contestant's obvious frailty. But what happened next would prove that some dreams are so powerful they transcend even death, and some acts of human kindness define us more than any career achievement ever could. David had been dying for 8 months. The lung cancer, aggressive and merciless, had spread despite every treatment available. Dr. Sarah Martinez had been gentle but direct during their last consultation. David, we're talking weeks, not months, maybe 6 to 8 if we're lucky. David had nodded with the calm acceptance of someone who'd lived long enough to make peace with mortality. At 82, he'd buried his wife Margaret 3 years ago after 57 years of marriage. His only son Michael had died in Afghanistan 12 years earlier. His daughter Susan lived in Australia with her own family, too far away to visit more than once a year. David was ready to die. He just had one last thing to do. Doctor, he'd asked Dr. Martinez, if I had something important to accomplish, something that would require travel and physical exertion, how long do I have for that? Dr. Martinez had studied his chart carefully. David, what are you thinking about? I want to audition for America's Got Talent, he'd said simply. I know it sounds crazy for a man my age, especially in my condition, but I've been writing a song for Margaret, and I think the world should hear it before I go. The doctor had been skeptical, concerned about the physical demands of travel and performance. But David's daughter Susan, when consulted via video call, had been surprisingly supportive. Dad's been writing songs his whole life, she told the doctor, never shared them with anyone except Mom and us kids. If he wants to sing one of them for the world before he dies, I think we should help him do that. The audition process had been carefully managed. AGT producers, informed of David's terminal diagnosis, arranged special accommodations, shorter waiting times, comfortable seating, medical staff on standby. David's oncologist had cleared him for travel with the understanding that this was essentially a hospice patient's final wish. David chose to perform Heaven's Calling, a song he'd written for Margaret during her final days in the cancer ward. It was about love that transcends death, about promises to meet again, about gratitude for a lifetime of shared moments. He'd been working on it for 3 years, perfecting every word, every note. Now standing under the blazing lights of the Dolby Theater, David felt the familiar tightness in his chest that signaled his damaged lungs struggling for oxygen. But he also felt something else, a profound sense of completion. Margaret had always believed he was talented enough to share his music with the world. Tonight, finally, he would prove her right. "Hello," Terry Crews announced with his characteristic warmth, though his voice carried extra gentleness when he saw David's condition. "Please welcome David Thompson from Milwaukee, Wisconsin." The audience applauded politely, many immediately recognizing that this elderly man was clearly unwell, but had summoned the courage to be here anyway. "Hello, David," Sophia said gently as he approached the microphone stand. "Thank you for being here with us tonight." David gripped the microphone stand for support, his breathing already labored from the short walk across the stage. "Thank you for having me. This is something I've dreamed about for a long time." "Tell us about yourself, David," Simon said, leaning forward with genuine interest. Something about this man's presence commanded respect. David cleared his throat, triggering a small coughing fit that he tried to suppress. "I'm 82 years old. I've been married to the most wonderful woman in the world for 57 years. She passed away 3 years ago from cancer." His voice grew stronger as he talked about Margaret. "Margaret always believed I could write songs that would touch people's hearts. She used to say, 'David, you have something beautiful inside you that the world needs to hear.' "And what will you be performing for us tonight?" Heidi asked softly. "A song I wrote for my wife during her final days. It's called Heaven's Calling. It's about saying goodbye to someone you can't imagine living without and finding the courage to let them go." The judges exchanged glances. There was something profound in David's demeanor, a sense that this performance carried weight beyond entertainment. David, Howie said gently, "this must be very emotional for you to perform." David nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "It is, but Margaret made me promise something before she died. She made me promise that I wouldn't let fear stop me from sharing my music. She said the world has enough sadness, and if I could add even a little bit of beauty to it, I should." He paused to catch his breath, the effort of talking clearly taxing his compromised lungs. "Tonight is about keeping that promise, and—" He looked directly at the main camera. "It's about giving the world one last gift from both of us." Something in his phrasing, "one last gift," caught Simon's attention. This felt like more than just a memorial performance. The music began, a simple, beautiful piano arrangement that David had worked out with the show's musical director. As the opening notes played, David closed his eyes and seemed to draw strength from somewhere deep inside. When he began to sing, his voice was thin and reedy, weakened by months of illness, but it carried an emotional depth that filled the entire theater. "Heaven's calling your name, my darling, but I'm not ready to let you go. 57 years of mornings? How am I supposed to face them alone? But you're telling me to be brave now. You're telling me love doesn't end. You're saying we're just saying see you later, not really saying goodbye, my friend." The judges were immediately captivated. This wasn't just a song. It was a conversation with someone who was no longer there, sung by someone who clearly understood the reality of mortality. "I promise I'll take care of our garden. I promise I'll feed those stray cats you love. I promise I'll keep writing music until I can join you up above heaven's calling and you're answering, but you're leaving part of yourself here with me. In every song I'll ever sing now, in every note, your love will be." By the second verse, David's breathing was becoming more labored. The exertion of singing, combined with his damaged lungs, was taking its toll, but he pushed through, determined to finish Margaret's song. "And when my time comes to join you, when heaven calls my name too, I'll have this music to bring with me, these songs I wrote because of you. So go ahead, my beautiful Margaret, answer heaven's sweet call. Know that everything you believed in will live on after all." As David reached the final chorus, his voice began to falter, not from emotion alone, but from physical exhaustion. The audience could see him struggling, gripping the microphone stand tighter, his breathing becoming increasingly shallow. "Heaven's calling!" David's voice broke off as a violent coughing fit seized him. He doubled over, his frail body racked with spasms as his lungs fought for air. The audience gasped in collective concern. The judges half rose from their seats. Medical personnel started moving from the wings, but David straightened up, blood visible on his handkerchief, and tried to continue. "Heaven's call!" His legs gave out. David collapsed to his knees center stage, one hand pressed to his chest as his breathing became rapid and shallow. The microphone fell from his other hand, creating feedback that echoed through the silent theater. Simon Cowell made a decision that would define the rest of his career. Without hesitation, he vaulted over the judges' table and ran onto the stage. Reaching David in seconds, Simon knelt beside the elderly man and gently supported his shoulders. "David," Simon said softly, "it's okay. You did beautifully." David looked up at Simon with eyes that were growing dim, but still determined. "Need to finish the song," he whispered, "for Margaret." Simon looked at the fallen microphone, then at David, then at the 3,000 people watching in stunned silence. In that moment, he made another unprecedented decision. Simon picked up the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes, "David Thompson has given us the most beautiful gift tonight. He shared his love for his wife Margaret, his music, and his heart with all of us." He looked down at David, who was struggling to stay conscious but listening intently. "David, you started something beautiful here tonight, and with your permission, I'd like to help you finish it." David's eyes widened slightly, and he managed a small nod. "Simon, who had never sung publicly in his life, who had built his career on critiquing others' performances, began to sing the final chorus of David's song, Heaven's Calling, and you're answering, but you're leaving part of yourself here with me in every song that will ever be sung now, in every note, your love will be free. Simon's voice was untrained, imperfect, but it carried something more important than technical skill. It carried love, respect, and the determination to honor a dying man's final wish. As Simon sang, something extraordinary happened. The other judges joined him on stage. Sophia, Heidi, and Howie formed a circle around David and Simon and began humming harmonies to support the impromptu performance. Then the audience began to stand. Row by row, 3,000 people rose to their feet, not in applause but in solidarity, creating a cathedral of human compassion around one man's final moment. Simon finished the song, his voice breaking on the last line, Heaven's calling, but love never dies. The silence that followed was sacred. David, still supported by Simon's arms, looked up with eyes that were peaceful now, accepting. Thank you, he whispered. Margaret she would have loved this. David, Simon said softly, your song is beautiful. Your love for Margaret is beautiful. And the gift you've given us tonight, showing us what courage looks like, what love looks like, that's something we'll never forget. David managed a small smile. Tell people, tell them to write their songs while they can. Tell them not to wait. Those were his final words. David Thompson passed away in Simon Cowell's arms on the stage of America's Got Talent, surrounded by people who had been strangers minutes earlier but had become witness to one of the most profound expressions of love and loss ever shared. The aftermath was unprecedented. The show didn't air David's audition as entertainment. Instead, they created a special tribute episode honoring his life and his message. Simon established the David and Margaret Thompson Foundation to help terminally ill patients share their artistic gifts with the world. But perhaps the most powerful legacy was how David's story changed Simon himself. The man who had built a career on sharp criticism became known for his compassion, his willingness to see beyond performance to the human story beneath. David taught me that some moments are bigger than television. Simon would later say, some moments are about recognizing when someone is offering you the greatest gift they have to give and being worthy of receiving it. The song Heaven's Calling was never officially recorded, but it lived on in the hearts of everyone who witnessed David's final performance, a reminder that love transcends death, that courage can be found in our darkest moments, and that sometimes the most beautiful music comes not from perfect voices, but from perfect hearts. David Thompson died as he had lived, giving everything he had to the people he loved, and in doing so, he reminded the world that our final acts can be our most beautiful ones, that dying with dignity means living with purpose until the very end. Share this story, because the world needs more people like David, who refuse to let fear stop them from sharing their gifts, and more people like Simon, who understand that sometimes the greatest performance isn't singing perfectly, it's showing up completely for someone who needs you most.